Hello, and in this video we'll cover the midpoint formula, also in section 1.1. The midpoint formula is based upon the two coordinates as we did earlier in the distance formula, x1, y1 and x2, y2. We're finding this coordinate this time. We're not finding the length of the line, but we're finding the midpoint coordinate, the actual value of the midpoint. So what we do is we take the distances here and we average the distances. So we take this distance here, whatever it is, and we cut that in half, and that's how far along the x value we would do that. That is found by averaging the x values here. x2 plus x1 divided by 2 basically takes you halfway to this point. So we're taking the average of that value, and that's our coordinate, our x coordinate of the midpoint. And then we do the same thing for the y value. Vertically, if we want to go from here up to this point, we would take an average of these 2 points. We would want to find the middle of that value between between y2 and y1. And here is the formula for that average, y2 plus y1 divided by 2. So the midpoint is basically the average of the coordinates. And in this case, it is a point, so we just have to make sure that you understand that it is a midpoint. So we have a coordinate. It's not going to give us a single value. It's going to give us an ordered pair. So let's take a look at an example. So we're going to use the same example as we did on the last thing on the distance formula. So in this example, we're going to find the midpoint between the points -2, 3, and 10, 8. So I've labeled these just as before. We have this green line drawn here. We want to find that midpoint using the formula. So basically we're going to use an average of the x coordinates. So we're going to take x2, that's 10, plus x1, which is -2, and then we're going to divide that by 2. That's going to give us our x value of our coordinate. And then our y value is going to be 8, the y2, plus the y1, which is 3, over 2, the average of those two values. So that's going to be our midpoint, the average of the x values, average of the x values, average of the y values. Now in simplifying this, we're going to get 8 over 2, and we're going to get 11 over 2. Okay, so that's going to be the point 4. 4 comma, and 11 over 2 is 5.5, right? 5.5. Now looking at your picture, let's just make sure that that makes sense. So if we go over 4 and up 5.5, are we about halfway on that line? So here's 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's the midpoint, and we were saying that this point right here looks like it's going to be the midpoint. And it does look like it's on the line over 4, 5.5. So basically this was before, remember this was 12 units, so halfway over is 6. So if we add 6 and we go this way, 6 units, because this whole thing was 12. This whole line was 12 units, and half of that is 6. We can either go 6 from this end point or 6 from this end point. We're still going to end up at 4. And then going down, the value was 5. And we divide that by 2, we get 2.5. So if we go down 2.5, either down from this point 2.5 or up from this point 2.5, we're going to get 5.5. So that verifies that we have that value that correct. So that's how we find the midpoint